Well, good morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm Morton Blackwell, president of the Leadership Institute, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this, our Wednesday Wake Up Club breakfast. If I could have your attention, please. We live in interesting times. I was the youngest Goldwater delegate to the Republican National Convention of 1964. And that was a very interesting presidential race because his principal opponent was Nelson Rockefeller, longtime governor of New York. And after the California primary in 1964, it was clear that Goldwater had a majority of the votes, of the delegate votes, and would be the nominee. Interestingly, however, maybe that's not the right word for it, interestingly, but in any case, Nelson Rockefeller continued after Goldwater had a clear majority of the delegates and through the campaign and made it very clear in many ways that he was hostile to the election of the Republican nominee. And so, as a result of yesterday's primaries, it's now quite clear who is going to be the Republican nominee. And Wall Street Journal has reported that at 10 o'clock this morning, Nikki Haley is going to suspend her campaign. And the most interesting part of this is Nikki Haley going to be the Nelson Rockefeller of the 21st century?
Had the money, that would be okay.
Well, Nelson Rockefeller was a self-funder, and she isn't. We'll see what happens, but it is surely interesting. I encourage you all to live tweet today's event. The hashtag is on the screens that you can see. In 2023, your Leadership Institute trained at an all-time record, big increase over any other year. We trained 31,446 conservatives, and we conducted last year 2,121 training programs. Since 1979, the Institute has trained over 290,000 activists, students, and leaders, and we've trained 11,500 people who are Virginians who have attended one or more of our training schools. You have before you our schedule for the upcoming months, and I urge you to take a moment to review these schools and to consider attending one or sending friends to a training. If you are watching online, I invite you to visit our website at leadershipinstitute.org/training to see upcoming online and in-person events. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you Gabrielle Hérault, who will offer an invocation and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Gabby Hérault is from Fairhaven, Massachusetts. She's a recent graduate of Merrimack College, where she majored in political science with minors in communications, media, and pre-law. Active on campus, Gabby served as class senator for student government, and she started chapters of Warriors for Life and Young Americans for Liberty. Additionally, she was the president of the Model United Nations and a residential advisor. While in school, Gabby worked on the public relations side of the Jeff Deal gubernatorial campaign. Outside of politics and school, she enjoys reading, listening to music, playing her violin, and she spends time with her family and friends. She plans to attend law school this fall, and it will be either at Florida International University or George Mason University. And she wants to study First Amendment litigation. And Gabby is here at the Institute now as our grassroots intern. Gabby, come up, please.
Thank you, Morton. Good morning, everyone. I would just like to start with a prayer. So if you would all prepare yourselves as you would. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for gathering us here today to listen to Congresswoman Cammack about her experiences and what she's doing to help the conservative movement today throughout our country and in her own little corner of Florida. I thank you for everyone's safe travels here, and I pray for everyone's safe travels home, and that they can all take what Congresswoman Cammack says to us today and apply it in their own lives and in their fights for our country. And I pray all of this in your name. Amen. And I would like you to please rise if you are able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabby. Our speaker today is on a very tight schedule. There's activities on Capitol Hill that she has to participate in, so we're going to forego our customary brief programs report about the Institute, but just let me say things are going extraordinarily well here at the Institute. To introduce our speaker, Gadai Bulgak, who is the intern in my office this semester. Gadai was born in the Republic of Moldova, but he was raised in California and currently resides in Houston, Texas. He studies economics at the University of Houston and hopes to work for a nonprofit think tank. I wonder where. Gadai is involved in several organizations on his campus, including Young Americans for Liberty and American Conservative Coalition. Outside of school, Gadai has interned for Americans for Prosperity. He's also a Dreesen Fellow for the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, where he writes articles about and researches the economic impact of environmental policies. Gadai enjoys classical music, which I can attest to because he and I have listened to some classical music together and a road trip. And he also likes jazz music, which is okay with me. He likes fitness and hiking in the great outdoors. Gadai, would you come up and introduce our outstanding graduate speaker today?
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Morton. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday Wake Up Club breakfast. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It is my great honor and privilege to introduce our speaker for today, Congresswoman Kat Cammack. Congresswoman Kat Cammack proudly serves as Florida's 3rd Congressional District. During her first term in 2021 to 2022, she served as the youngest Republican woman in the 117th Congress. She served for nearly a decade as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Florida's 3rd Congressional District prior to her election in 2020. While in this role, she advocated for small business owners, veterans and military families, agricultural producers, and hardworking families like her own, motivated by her family's story. She holds a master's degree in national defense and strategic studies from the United States Naval War College and has used her experience in the national defense. During the 117th Congress, Kat served on the House Agricultural and Homeland Security Committees, along with the Select Committee on the Economy. While serving on these committees, Kat brought attention to the challenges faced by working-class families and Florida's farmers, ranchers, and producers with rising inflation, labor challenges, and supply chain issues. She also worked to highlight the historic border crisis, visiting the southern border and questioning the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas multiple times before the committee. Now serving in her second term during the 118th Congress, she works to prioritize constituent advocacy and service, fighting for families, national security, and government accountability. Kat is the proud wife to her husband, Matt, a Gainesville native, who serves the Gainesville Fire Rescue as a firefighter paramedic and a SWAT medic. Kat and Matt have several backyard chickens and ducks. And in their rare bit of spare time, a very busy schedule there, enjoy spending time with their little critters, fishing, football, traveling, and skeet and trap. Please give a warm welcome to Congresswoman Kat Cammack. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. It's always awkward listening to that when you're sitting right there. You never really know how to react. We have to get you a glass of water. Somebody's having a...
I'll take care of that. I'll be right back.
Hey, I'll wait on you. Don't worry. Well, good morning. It's always good when you say it back. I was pilfering through the report at my seat, so I hope you don't mind, Morton. I am always so impressed. This is incredible. This is absolutely incredible, and as a Leadership Institute grad, this brings so much joy and so much pride of how the work continues to this day. And I'll dig into that in a little bit, but I did want to tell a little bit of my story, talk a little bit about what's going on Capitol Hill. Oh, bless all their hearts. I'm from the South. Y'all know what that means. You know, I once said that to Nancy Pelosi. I said, "Oh, bless your heart." And she smiled at me. It took her about 12 seconds to really register what I was saying. And immediately she went from like, "Oh, that's nice," to, "Oh." Bless her heart. Yet I appreciate the wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for that. You know, it has been a wild journey to where we are today. If I had to sum it up, it would be homeless to the house. I did grow up the daughter of a single mom, a family that struggled with a lot of addiction issues and challenges, very blue-collar, working-class family. I'm a third-generation commercial sandblaster. Not the sexiest topic on career day, let me tell you. Everyone was all infatuated with their parents who were police officers and firefighters and all the cool things. And, you know, my mom walks in, she's like, "I'm a commercial sandblaster." And every kid is like, "Eh." But I'll tell you what, that taught me what it means to be a hard worker. And I credit my work ethic to my mom and all the challenges that we went through as a small family business. And I didn't grow up particularly political. My mom, she was a registered Democrat. My entire family, they were registered Democrats. In fact, I found out recently, going through some of my grandparents' boxes of papers, I found an invitation to the inauguration of JFK and all of the activities, one of the programs, and it had all of these remarkable little tidbits in there. And I just said, I didn't even know that they were that involved, or, you know, and it was pretty staggering to me. Of course, we know that JFK today would be a Republican, but the thing that is interesting to me is growing up, my mom always said, "Honey, I want you to vote for the person, not the party. I want you to vote for the person who you think will do the best job." And so even though she was a registered Democrat, we weren't particularly active in politics. I never had volunteered on a campaign, never donated to a campaign. My mom certainly didn't. You know, we were busy with life trying to keep our head above water. But one thing that was happening naturally to me, without me even realizing it, being, you know, in the small family business that was constantly struggling, I was being conditioned naturally as I was being exposed to government interference in our everyday life. I was growing up seeing OSHA and EPA and the DOL constantly figuring out ways to interfere, and not in a productive way, not in a way that made our business better or safer or easier to conduct, but it was just always seeming like it was an unnecessary interference, an additional burden, and there was always a dollar sign attached to it. And so I was growing up already thinking like, these guys suck. Like, why are they even here? And it didn't dawn on me until I was in college, and I admittedly I had registered as an independent because I didn't know about the party platforms. I didn't know the principles. You know, when you're 17 years old, you're just, you know, you're going to prom, you're trying to go to college, you're doing all these things. And I remember registering, and I did vote Republican right out the gate because I saw the platform of the other guy, and I was like, ooh, they're crazy. And I kept hearing about how one side wanted more control, more dependence on big government, more ways to grow the government, and the other side was trying to figure out ways to give more freedom, more liberty, more independence. And I'm like, well, that seems like a no-brainer. I mean, heck, that's America in a nutshell. And so I had naturally been conditioned to have this mindset, but it wasn't until April of 2011 that it really dawned on me that I was going to have to make a choice. We got word that our family ranch, we had a small cow-calf operation, that was our home, and we got word that through no fault of our own, we didn't do anything wrong, we were being evicted. We were losing our home. And come to find out, because like any good millennial, you know, you don't know what's going on until you Google it. And even now, that's dangerous. But I couldn't figure out why we were losing everything. And I started Googling it, and I started finding out that there had been a piece of legislation in Washington that both Republicans and Democrats had supported. And it had been this monstrosity of a bill that in the dead of night had been passed, and it was President Obama's signature housing initiative, designed after the '08 crash to keep people in their homes. Well, in reality, when you read it, it actually incentivized big banks to push people out of their homes. It was a $78 billion program that gave a tax credit for every loan that the banks, deemed unsavable. No questions asked, no transparency, no accountability. And my family, along with millions others, found themselves homeless. And that's when, as I'm, like I said, a good millennial, Googling these horrific stories and finding out what's going on, and we're at this point homeless and living in an extended stay motel, I had to make a decision. I said, if they can do this to us, there's no consequences, no one's really even talking about it, what else are they capable of? And at that moment I knew I could either put my head back in the sand and I could go about my life and try to rebuild my life and get my family on a better path, or I could do something. Now, at that point in time, I had no idea what that meant, not a clue. But I had a family friend who called me up and he said, Kat, I know you guys are down on your luck, but I have an uncle who's running for Congress in Florida, and he hates government as much as you do. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, I think you should move to Florida, and I think you should run his campaign. And I said, I don't know the first thing about running a campaign. And he said, Google it. I'm like, well, fiddle-dee-dee, I will. And so I packed up everything I owned into my beat-up Nissan Maxima, which I should have kept that dang car because it was a manual, it was a stick shift. And here in D.C., they're stealing cars left and right, but they can't steal a stick shift because none of these youngsters know how to drive a stick shift. So I should have had the foresight to keep that dang car. But no, I drove across the country from Colorado to Florida in this beat-up Nissan Maxima with all my fishing gear sticking out the window because I was president of the Bass Fishing Club. I love fishing. I know, my nerdy side is showing. But I had all my clothes in there, and I show up in Florida at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I'm here. And I've Googled it, and I know what to do, kind of. And we ran an insurgent campaign against a 24-year incumbent who had $2.4 million in the bank. And let me tell you, that campaign taught me so much about the power that we the people have. And I had some pretty great help along the way. I had resources that I had stumbled across here at the Leadership Institute that gave me some insight, some tools that I was able to implement. And we ended up winning that race by 829 votes. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And afterwards, we're sitting around, because the race was in the primary, not so much the general. And we're sitting around, and my candidate looks at me, and he's like, so what now? And I was like, I don't know, but we should Google it. And next thing you know, I've joined the official congressional staff after we make it official. I'm one of the youngest chiefs of staff on the Hill. Not sure what the heck I'm doing. Again, Googling it. And once again, I find myself at the Leadership Institute learning, giving myself the tools necessary to be successful. And without a doubt, there were mistakes made on my part. I mean, you're 22. What the heck do you know? But in those moments where I was making mistakes, but also seeking out knowledge, the Leadership Institute was a constant. And for that, I will always be grateful. But I got to tell you, today, now I find myself a member, which was not part of my game plan, and certainly not my husband's. You know, being in Gainesville, I met my husband, Matt, and when it came time to make the decision to run after my boss was retiring, we went and did what every good Southerner does when you have to make a life-changing decision. We go to our local barbecue joint. And I remember sitting there with my best friend and my husband, and we're talking about, should we run? You know, I was 30 years old, 31, and it's pretty intimidating when you have an open seat and a very conservative seat, and you've got everyone coming out of the woodwork, people from out of state who are like, ooh, I want that seat in Florida. I'm going to move to Florida. Ended up being the largest primary field in the state of Florida, 12 opponents. And we're sitting there, and my husband is trying desperately to talk me out of this, and my best friend is trying to talk me out of this, and I finally just looked at them, and I thought back to all the things that had happened in my life up to that point, and I said, babe, to my husband, I said, we don't have kids yet, but when we do, are you going to be able to look them in the eye and tell them that mom and dad did absolutely everything possible to give them the same shot in life that we have had? And keep in mind, he knows where I've come from. He comes from a broken family. And he starts crying. Now, he's Mr. Macho Man. You know, he's got the firefighter stash, you know, I mean, big burly guy. But he starts tearing up, and so he starts crying, and my best friend starts crying, and I'm a sympathy crier, so I start crying. The waitress starts crying. The booth behind us that's been eavesdropping on the whole conversation, they start crying. And basically the whole restaurant was like, yeah, we're doing this. It was a great moment, and that put us on a path that was a wild experience. We had the largest primary field in the state of Florida, 12. And I kept hearing from people, Kat, you should talk about being the woman in the race. Or you should talk about being the young one in the race. And I finally sat back and I said, I can't believe, after everything that I've been through, that you guys want me to go out and tell the American people or my constituents, potential constituents, that they should vote for me because I check a box. Shame on you. I said, I will never have people say, vote for me because I check a box. I want you to vote for me because I'm the best damn person for the job. And, well, thank you, because my campaign team was hyperventilating. They're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And I just said, that is fundamentally at odds, that concept is fundamentally at odds with what I believe as an American. And so they said, well, Republicans in a primary, they all kind of sound the same. How are you going to stand out? I said, I'm just going to be myself. And they're like, what does that mean? I said, we'll have the chickens run around, and I'll grab my Benelli shotgun, which is my shotgun, by the way. Everyone said it was my husband's. It's mine. I said, I'm going to walk around. I'm going to talk about, you know, constitutional rights and liberty and freedom. And they're like, what's that going to look like? I'm like, it'll be fun. So what ended up happening was we put custom-made ties on my chickens, which, by the way, in August, in 105-degree weather, running around trying to chase chickens. That's like ninja training, by the way. Trying to put ties on chickens, with the whole concept being that Washington is full of a bunch of chicken you-know-whats. And I'm walking around, you know, talking about these guys are just a bunch of chicken you-know-whats. You can't say that on television, though, of course. And I'm just like, they're going to run away from our pro-life values and our pro-liberty values and President Trump and our Second Amendment. And that's just chicken. And I start saying, shh, right? But you can't say that on television. So Flipper, our beautiful feathered feet chicken with the tie, it cuts to her and she goes, "Paka!" So that's the line. That's just chicken, "Paka!" And I remember, you can appreciate this, Morton. I remember watching this thing air, laughing hysterically, but then having the realization that every time I'm in the grocery store, people are going to call me the crazy chicken lady. And my husband looks at me, he's like, but they'll also call you Congresswoman. And I just thought it was so funny because that did actually, I mean, it really stuck, and it was very authentic to who we are. And we won, and it has brought us to this place where that commercial, even though it was made with a bit of humor and tongue-in-cheek, I tell you, living it up close and personal for the last 3 years as a member of Congress, we do have some chicken you-know-whats. And I think that is in large part because of the dynamics that we're operating within today. You know, the Overton window, which we're all familiar with, right? Where you have what is socially acceptable in our political realm, the hard right, the hard left, and everything in between. Everyone says that it shifts. I tend to think that we may have widened. And it's pretty crazy because people are now to the place where instead of going back to their oath of office, going back to our constitutional values and principles, and really reflecting on who we are as Americans, it's more of a kind of attitude out of some people who you would never even expect. And I feel like there's certainly a dynamic between populism and conservatism at work, right? There's this tug of war that's going on, and that can be a good and bad thing. But populism without principles is dangerous. And we have a real responsibility, especially when we are dealing with the issues that we are. Unprecedented spending, hyperinflation, a national debt that has now, just the interest on the debt alone, has outpaced defense spending. An overgrown administrative state with unelected, nameless, faceless bureaucrats that are doing everything they can to change the power dynamic in Washington. These are the moments when we need our principles the most, and we need principled people. And you guys are a huge contributor to making sure that people in Washington and across this country know exactly what that means. I was so tickled. I don't know if I should say that anymore. People are, they might take that the wrong way. I'm so tickled. The Read to Lead in your packets, we actually have a program in our office called Read to Lead to try to address the literacy crisis in this country. Only 32% of 8th graders in the country today are proficient at a 3rd grade reading level. And you can directly track the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline based on whether or not a child can read. And that is a huge crisis in this country that people are ignoring. So we have this program designed to help combat that called Read to Lead. But I was so tickled to see this in the program on the desk, because this right here, if every member of Congress read these books that are listed here, we'd be in a much different place. Heck, if the Republicans read these books, we'd be in a much different place. And I think there's such a desire, but more importantly, a need to get back to our core tenets of liberty and freedom, that if we don't, we risk going down a path that we can't come back from. And so I appreciate everything that you all have done. I know this week has been tremendously challenging with everybody's calling it a mini omnibus. I call it a megabus. I think we are trying desperately to snap the CR fever, the continuing resolution fever in Washington, but we're going to have some tough family discussions. There's going to be some things happening this week with TikTok. When we are trying to balance national security in the face of some of the most malicious spyware that I've ever seen, and attempts to undermine American sovereignty, using constitutional freedoms as a basis to spy on Americans. I mean, this is the stuff we're contending with. This is when you need to have that backbone and know what you stand for and understand why you're a conservative, why you believe in this country. Because let me tell you, the left, they've got it figured out. Their motto, their mantra, it's simple. Dependency and control. Everyone always asks me, what are the left? What's the left after? What do they want? Is it socialism? Is it this? Is it that? I said, no, they don't have one policy that's going to tick the box for them. For the left, it's very simple. Dependency and control. Grow the size of government, put people on big government programs, make them dependent on them so that the Democrats, those on the left, stay in control. Very simple. That is what we are up against. And I feel like sometimes we're a little bit like a pinball machine, just kind of batting it around like, no, 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 no. We have to get back to the place of explaining, sharing what we stand for, not what we're against, but what we are for. Because people want to be a part of something, not just against something. And so we have some big ticket items at stake, but I know that with the support of folks like you and the work that is done here, getting people ready for the fight, which it's an eternal fight. We require vigilance for all eternity to maintain this crazy, wild experiment in liberty and freedom in America. But it's only possible because of organizations like Leadership Institute. And it's only possible because of people like you in this room. So I'm going to take some questions now, if that's all right. I've talked way too long, but thank you again for the opportunity to be here.
I was just
Wait, you
curious-
gotta tell me your name.
My name is Bill Mower. And
Bill?
I live over in East Falls Church, the Arlington neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I'm not getting the furthest traveled award today. But I want to know if you put a dollar figure in the thousands on how much you saved having your own chickens when eggs went to $8 a gallon.
You know, it's funny because chicken math is a little bit like girl math.
Yeah.
You rationalize that you're going to just start with 10. But then you're like, but now I need my chickens to give me multiple different colors of eggs, right? Because spring's coming, you want your Easter eggers. And next thing you know, then you're getting picky about the food that they eat. And then next thing you know, you're mixing your own. And if you get chickens, then you got to get ducks. And then if you get ducks, you might as well get a goat. So the chicken math never quite adds up. But it was funny when everything fell apart. My husband, Matt, we were literally hawking things for egg cartons. Like there was a premium on egg cartons because we wanted to sell the eggs and give the eggs away. And Matt kind of turned the firehouse into a black market for egg trading. And it was kind of funny, but it was such a funny experience being able to have so many egg producers, in the operation. And I tell you, when you have chickens, you learn that you can make any recipe and incorporate eggs somehow. What I wasn't anticipating was the duck eggs. It's a whole nother saga. Yeah, but yeah, it was fun. It's been a fun experience. And my girls, they're now, they're probably 8 or 9 years old, and they started laying again.
Yeah. So cluck proudly. Cluck at Nancy and cluck at everyone on the other side of the aisle because you found your way around the inflationary bubble that they caused.
Well, it's funny. I see these bumper stickers as I travel the country, and of course we have the shirts. But our tagline is "No more chicken, you know what, politicians." And so if you see that, that's ours, and we want to, of course, support the chickens.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. We'll go here, and then we'll come to you right here in the front. Are you from Ocala?
Yes, I am.
Holy buckets!
I happen to be one of your constituents.
Well, hello. I hope I made you proud today.
I'm George Stickles. I 45-year member at USDA, careerist at USDA. I still work there. I'm 80 years old, but I still work.
Oh, bless your heart. Not in a bad way.
Thank you, Nancy. Quick question. Yes, I am one of your constituents. I'm very
Yes.
glad to meet you. This is my first time at the Institute. I've known Morton for years, but I've never been here before, and I am really impressed with this place. And it's very interesting to know that you are a graduate, and I think you've benefited from that.
Absolutely.
Question, when are we going to have a farm bill?
All right, this is one of my hot button issues. So I serve as the lone Republican on House Agriculture for the entire state of Florida. And George, you know this better than anybody. Everyone thinks that Florida is nothing but beaches and palm trees and Disney, right? No. One of the biggest economic driver, in fact, the second largest economic driver of the state of Florida's economy is agriculture. And we got 300 specialty crops. We're one of the top cow-calf operations in the country. It's big. It's a big deal for us. And we don't have a lot of support because, you know, no offense, our Midwest guys, the corn and soybean folks, they get a lot of support. When it comes to Florida and all our specialty crops, we are kind of at the butt end of everything. And we deal with pressures that no one else has to. I will say that there's been a lot of trade deals that have hurt us in ways that people didn't anticipate. There's the regulatory environment, which is absolutely crushing us. On the Farm Bill, which is critical, I think we are going to see it hopefully in April. But I will say from Floridian to Floridian, we have the most to lose if we don't get this done. I think the mindset in Washington of having just a rubber stamp and calling it a day, that is so dangerous and so lazy. But few people care about the consequences because they're in the bubble up here. They don't see that our peanut producers are literally going under. They don't see that our watermelon farmers are going under. They don't see all of the high input costs that are absolutely crushing us. So from a labor standpoint, a regulatory standpoint, a energy prices standpoint, all of the above, we're tag teaming it through Energy and Commerce Committee as well as Agriculture. I will say I have concerns about it actually making it. Some inside baseball, I think the bill, it's $1.5 trillion, and they have no modifications to the nutritional title. None. And the thing that really chapped my rear end, I'm cleaning this up really, really good. I am. I'm trying so hard. The thing that really frustrates me about this is that when I pressed USDA for an actual accounting of how much U.S. product goes towards the nutritional program, they wouldn't give it to me. We had to go through all other sources, and finally, through Congressional Research Service, was able to figure out that every single year, American taxpayers pay $124 billion with a B towards the nutritional program. Only 26 million is required by law to be American. I think if it's an American taxpayer who's footing the bill, don't you think it should be American fruits and vegetables and dairy and products that they're consuming? That is, to me, one of the craziest things. And so we're getting a lot of resistance on that, but we have implemented AGI reforms, regulatory reforms. I introduced a bill putting potash and phosphate on the critical minerals list. I'll be damned if we keep looking to China and Russia for our critical minerals. We need to be serious about food security is national security, because any reliance for our food abroad is going to put us in a position of weakness, and it's compromising. I won't do it. So we have some big fights going on, but that price tag is scaring a lot of people. And the fact that we have not had the backbone to push back on the left and say, no, there have to be reforms made on the nutritional title, that's very concerning. So George, we're gonna swap numbers. I'll give you my cell phone number. Please don't put it at a truck stop on a bathroom wall. It gets weird after that. But we'll swap numbers. I'd love to talk to you about it. Thank you, George. Ma'am, you've been so patient.
Good morning, I'm
Good
Barbara Bowie Whitman.
That's a hell of a name.
Well, when I called myself Whitman after I married my husband, nobody remembered who I was because I'd been Bowie for so long. Anyway, I cast my first vote for president for Barry Goldwater and loved hearing Morton start the day by a reference to that point. After that, when we only had 27 million voters, I vowed to leave whatever job I had in '68 and work for whoever the nominee was because I wanted this party to live.
Yeah,
And I've been a hardcore conservative all my life.
I love that.
One of the things, and you said this morning, was that populism without principles, I don't remember the word you used after it, I'd call it useless. But at any rate, I want to know from you, because I know you've been a big Trump supporter. We've seen each other at many of his events. And I helped raise money for him last time. But I've had deep reservations about a populism which rejects many of us who've been hardcore conservatives all our lives and calls us rhinos. How do we get true conservative principles grafted onto this populist enthusiasm, and how do we allow MAGA to be more open to us?
That's a great question, man. We could do an entire series just on that question. And it's something that I have many conversations with my colleagues and people in the movement about, because I'm quick to remind my friends that even though I wasn't elected at the time, there was a lot of spending going on, unchecked. Where were all my good conservative friends questioning the rate of which we were spending money, driving the deficit? Where were all my good conservative friends when we were marching down this path and then turn around and then point fingers saying, oh, but they just want to spend, spend, spend? You can't have it both ways. And I think our credibility is rested. Thank you for that. I thought you were doing like the safety sign back there. It's like in Gator Nation we do this, but that's all right. What is so challenging is I talk to people, and the great thing about the America First movement is it's pulling in people and getting people enthused that have never been particularly engaged. That is one of the best parts about the America First movement, because people want to do something, they just don't know what they want to do, but they want to be involved, right? And so it's pulling people in. But that's where we need folks like Leadership Institute, other organizations that are grounded and rooted in the core tenets of what it means to be a conservative. I the other day was having a conversation with someone about AI. I serve on the AI task force. And it was effectively, this person called themselves a Republican. And it was the way they were talking, and we were talking about liberty and freedom. I said, I feel like I'm trying to explain Hayek to Stalin. I really think that there's elements of authoritarianism that are not understood. And we have to really educate people when it comes to what it means to be a conservative, the philosophical basis of what it means to be a conservative. You look abroad, I almost said the new Road to Serfdom, the Road to Serfdom, right? Classic. Read the updated version by Daniel Hanna, talking about the administrative state and what that has done to the EU. We can learn these lessons, but we have to share these lessons. And the infighting does nothing for the country. I can't tell you how many times I've had people say, you are a MAGA, Trumper, crazy conservative. I'm like, well, thank you. And then they're like, oh, and then, and it's crazy because then on the other hand, I'll have someone say, you're a rhino. And I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with that because I'm a conservative at heart. I'm an American first, a conservative second, a Republican third. You can call me anything, but I know who I am and I know what I believe in. But a lot of people can't articulate that. And it's because they don't understand the founding principles of this nation. They've never read the Federalist Papers. God forbid they crack a book on that. And it's just that element of how we really get ourselves there in the room with folks. We're getting to I know I'm over time. I could do a whole thing on this. We're living through a time right now that I affectionately call angertainment. Angertainment. I've got colleagues, both on the right and the left, and they love to go on the House floor, and they will give a fire-breathing, dragon-like speech on the House floor. The chamber is completely empty. No one's in there but them and the C-SPAN camera. And they are going to throw papers and stomp their feet and pound their fists, and they're going to say, I'm fighting so hard. Now, what they've done is they've taken that clip and they've pushed it out on social media, and they say, give me $5 so I can keep fighting the swamp. But what they're not telling you is that in the process of crafting that fire-breathing speech, they have alienated all of the people who they would need in order to actually advance their cause, and they actually haven't done anything to advance their cause. And what I have found about Washington is that the power in Washington by swamp creatures, it's derived from problems. That's how they have their power. Perpetuate a problem, because heaven forbid you solve it, you give away your leverage. And both people on the right and the left have figured that out. If we don't break the angertainment business model where you just keep people mad and frustrated and angry, and this is true for the social media influencers and the members, if we don't break this, we're going to lose our country. We have too many forces on the outside that want to divide us. They don't need us doing it from the inside. So Barbara, I'll talk to you all the time about this because I can get worked up. But thank you for the question. I know I'm over time. Thank you all so much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Just one moment, Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Terrific talk. I know you're doing a great job. As a token of our appreciation, let me present to you an Adam Smith ladies scarf.
Oh, well,
There we go. Thank you again.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank y'all. Doris, you gotta come get me.
I invite you all to join us on April 3rd for our next Wednesday Wake Up Club breakfast. Please RSVP online at leadershipinstitute.org/breakfast. Andres Nava, will you step up? And where is Andres? Ah, she's not here. Who in the development staff is going to conduct the tour then, if she is not here? Okay, let's give me a development staffer. Come on up, somebody.
I can do it more.
Okay, talk about a fun guide. Stephen Rowe is great, and he's often the first to volunteer, and he would be great. Stephen is going to lead those of you who are interested in a tour of our Stephen P.J. Wood building here and the Emerson and Dolores Rice Center for Campus Reform next door, and he'll give you a great tour of the Leadership Institute, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. And it's almost inconceivable that you could ask a question that Stephen Rowe wouldn't know, but if you happen to stump him, you can be coming through my office and pop in and ask that question to me. Thank you all. And Stephen is the guy if you are interested in a tour of our facilities. And we have a lot to see. Thank you very much.